On a seemingly routine flight, a black CEO was mocked, humiliated, and made to feel less than human, simply because of the color of his skin. It started with a casual comment, but the atmosphere quickly shifted as stares turned to whispers, and the whispers evolved into open ridicule. What was supposed to be a quiet, first-class journey turned into an ordeal that no one saw coming. But what happened next? The flight attendants, the crew, and even the passengers who watched in silence were about to face a reckoning. Will the system of power protect him, or will it crack under the pressure? Stay tuned to find out. Wait a second. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Dr. James Williams had worked tirelessly to get to where he was, a successful CEO of a growing tech company, a leader in his field, and a symbol of hard work and resilience. Despite the pressures of his career, James still managed to find time for himself. This flight was supposed to be his time to relax, to disconnect and breathe. The journey from New York to Los Angeles was a short one, and he was looking forward to the peace of first class. As he entered the cabin, he was greeted with polite nods from the flight attendants, who didn't seem to recognize him. He was just another passenger, just another person on a plane. But the subtle, nervous tension that began to ripple through the cabin was not lost on James. As the plane began its ascent, the whispers started. He noticed the subtle glances from the people around him, and his discomfort grew with each passing minute. It didn't take long for James to feel the stares turning into something more. It was just a simple comment at first, a flight attendant accidentally knocking into his shoulder, muttering an apology, and then glancing back at him. He brushed it off. But then the passengers next to him started whispering behind their hands. James, as calm as he appeared on the surface, could feel the atmosphere shift. His gut twisted in a way he knew too well. This wasn't just about him. This was about what they saw when they looked at him, the color of his skin. He sat back in his seat, trying to ignore the discomfort rising within him. However, as the minutes passed, the situation escalated. The flight attendants started speaking louder, casting him nervous glances, making sure they didn't stand too close. The tension in the air became almost unbearable. One passenger, an older woman, stood up from her seat and walked straight toward him. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I think you're in my seat." James, shocked by her tone, glanced at the boarding pass in his hand, then at the seat she was pointing to. It was his seat. "I'm afraid I'm in the right place," he replied calmly, trying to diffuse the situation with a polite smile. But the woman was insistent. "No, I'm certain this is my seat," she said, her voice growing louder. A few heads turned toward them. James knew then that something was happening here, a subtle form of racial hostility that could no longer be ignored. It was escalating, and it was becoming increasingly difficult to sit quietly. The flight attendants watched, not intervening, as the woman's voice grew increasingly accusatory. Things took a turn when the woman called over the flight attendant, demanding that James be removed from his seat. Her accusations became bolder. "He's just trying to get an upgrade, you know." "This isn't his first-class seat," she said, loudly enough for everyone around to hear. The flight attendant, still uncomfortable, nodded nervously and turned to James. James had had enough. He stood up, his voice calm but firm. "I am the CEO of Williams Technologies," he said, "and I assure you, I belong in this seat." But the damage had been done. The eyes of everyone in the cabin were on him now, and he could feel the judgment from every corner of the plane. The murmurs were getting louder, and the whispers turned to glares. As the flight attendants hesitated, the woman's accusations began to escalate. "I bet he didn't even pay for this ticket. Someone probably upgraded him because of his race," she spat. At that moment, the plane seemed to hold its breath. Everyone was waiting for the confrontation to explode. James knew that no matter how this ended, it wasn't just about a seat anymore. It was about something much deeper, prejudice, and the way society treated him, even when he had worked so hard to prove himself. The entire plane was silent. The flight attendants quickly moved to defuse the situation, but it was too late. James had been humiliated in front of everyone. As the plane began to descend, the weight of what had just happened started to sink in. He wasn't just embarrassed by the incident. He was deeply wounded. But what followed was something he had not expected. The other passengers, some of them white, started speaking up. A man from the back of the plane stood and shouted, "This isn't right! You can't treat him like that!" Slowly, others began to join in, some calling out the crew for their silence, others demanding accountability from the airline. By the time the plane landed, the atmosphere had shifted. The airline had no choice but to issue an apology. The CEO's public humiliation was met with a wave of backlash that forced the company to take action. What happened to James Williams on that plane was just one example of a deeper problem, systemic racism that had once again reared its ugly head. But it didn't stop there. The incident went viral, sparking national outrage. The question now was, how many more lives would be affected before actual change took place? How many more stories like this will it take before equality is more than a seat assignment? Tell me, where are you watching from? Take care.